The next group of elements that we're going to take a look at as we move across the periodic table can be found right in the center of the periodic table, in this area that kind of looks like a valley in the middle of the table, a little bit offset from the middle. And this is known as the transition metals section. All of these elements are classified as metallic in nature, and they are bridging the gap between what are sometimes referred to as the main group elements. Those would be the two of the alkali and alkaline earth metal families, and then all of the ones in that square section of the table off to the right. So of the transition metals, these are the properties of these elements are they typically can take on lots of different cation forms. We talked about those in the previous lesson. Cations are atoms that have lost electrons and therefore they have a positive charge. A unique characteristic about these transition metals is that they can have multiple cation charges, or cation forms rather, meaning that you can have, take chromium for instance, you may have 2, 3, 4, even 5 different types of chromium cations that have different positive charges. And one of the characteristics that, the way that we can see this or observe this is oftentimes transition metals will form brightly colored compounds, or solutions that contain these ions will be very distinctly colored. So as far as which transition metals that you ought to be familiar with, you can see the list here at the bottom of the screen. And most of the symbols are pretty identifiable with the name. There are some patterns. Sometimes if you get stuck, as we'll see, sometimes the first and the second letter, that would be the first, the most obvious place to look for a pattern, but also the first and the third letters. That seems to be a frequent pattern to the letters that are used in each symbol. It's not a fail-safe, but if you're really stuck, you're spinning your wheels, and you just have to make an educated guess, there are quite a few elements of the periodic table, including in this particular section, that go with the first and the third elements. So if we take a look at the ones that are listed here, you have titanium, Ti, and then chromium, Cr. There's one that goes by that first and third letter pattern. Titanium was first and second. It's pretty straightforward. The next one, manganese, is Mn. Now manganese is oftentimes confused with magnesium, which was one of the elements in the alkaline earth metal family. And so you can see the symbol for manganese is Mn. And here's where that first and third letter of the word pattern for the element symbols comes in handy. Because if you're stuck between magnesium and manganese, which is it, Mg, Mn, go with the first letter and the third letter. Manganese, Mn. Magnesium was Mg. Then we get to the first out of our group here that have kind of the strange symbols that don't seem to match up with the name. And the first one being iron with its symbol Fe. Now, if you think about iron, iron's a metal, it's an element that's been around for a long, long time. It's been known since ancient times. And if you think about the language that was frequently used by scientists, by philosophers, by the educated, those that were studying the world around them, it was Latin. And so when you consider the Latin name for iron, which is ferrum, it's very easy to see where the symbol Fe comes from the Latin name, ferrum. Cobalt, Co, pretty straightforward. Nickel, Ni. Watch the spelling on that. It's El, not Le. Then we come to copper. And copper, the C isn't so shocking, but the U is a bit of a mystery. Again, copper is an ancient element, and when we consider the Latin name for copper, which is cuprum, again, it becomes easy to see where the Cu derives from. The end of the first row, in the transition metal section, we have zinc with the symbol Zn. And in the next row, we come to zirconium, which has Zr for its symbol. Here is another example of where the first and the third letters are used so that you can differentiate between two elements that have, some similarities to their names. If we tried using the first and second letters, we wouldn't be able to distinguish between zinc and zirconium. The next element, Tc, there are a couple different pronunciations you might encounter. It is not pronounced technetium. You'll usually hear it either technetium or technetium, so either an S sound or an SH sound. And the interesting thing about technetium is that all naturally occurring isotopes of technetium have long since decayed away. All the different forms or isotopes of technetium are unstable. And so any naturally occurring samples of this element have decayed away. Now, that's not to say that we can't have technetium today or work with it. Other elements may decay into a form of technetium, or if you take smaller nuclei and use a particle accelerator, ram them together to make a larger nucleus, we can produce technetium that way as well, potentially. And so you may think also that just because it's unstable means of what use could that be? But actually we can leverage that instability, and doctors, the medical community, uses technetium-99 specifically, as a medical tracer. And so the ability of an atom or an isotope to give off particles or energy, we can detect those things, and we can use that to track a reaction, to track things in the body, and to get an idea, is the body working properly? So the next element on your list here is silver, with the symbol Ag. That, again, silver is an ancient element. When we consider the Latin name for silver, which is argentum, then we can see where the Ag comes from. You may think that name sounds a lot like Argentina. And when we look into the history of the elements and their names, we find that they come from all different sources. Sometimes they're named in honor of a person or a place. Sometimes they're named after the place where they were discovered. They could be named based off of a use for that particular element and some product or some application that they were used for. Cadmium, Cd, and then we have tungsten, which is W. Now here's another one where the symbol doesn't quite match its name. So we know it's derived from another name. This one's not Latin, it's German. It's the word wolfram, and that word derives from the mineral from which tungsten is extracted, which is called wolframite. Then we have the precious metal platinum, Pt. And then gold, its symbol Au, comes from the Latin name for gold, which is aurum. And the last one, mercury, Hg, comes from the Latin name, this one's kind of fun, hydrogyrum. Mercury was also known as quicksilver, but the Latin name for mercury was hydrogyrum. So again, as you're studying these, and these are the more common ones, so it's about a little less than half of all of them. But these are ones that we frequently encounter in general chemistry. So again, make sure that you can identify the symbols when given the names. When you're given the symbols, make sure that you can give the proper spelling for each of those names. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next group of elements to learn. Have a good day.